Good evening to all of you. I, Archana M., on behalf of Silicon City College of Management and Commerce, I welcome you all for this 5 days online faculty development program on beginning research in language and literature. I welcome you all. Over to Pallavi.
Thank you, Archana ma'am. Good evening, everyone. I, Pallavija, Assistant Professor, Silicon City College, welcome you all to this 5 days faculty development program on beginning research in language and literature. Before we begin, we would like to inform you that the sessions on all 5 days, starting from today, will be of 75 minutes each. First 60 minutes will be a lecture or presentation by the resource person, followed by questions in the last 15 minutes. Please hold on your questions. You can type it in the chat box. Host will allow you to ask the same after the presentation. The presentation will be in English. However, during question and answer session, it may be relaxed a little. We remind all the participants that the webinar, this FDP intends to initiate the lead uh, to lead them towards becoming research aspirants. We all know that every young mind who aspires to be an educator has a dream to be a research scholar. But due to lack of information and guidance, we hesitate to go ahead with our plans. These 5 days are going to be really fruitful for all of us present here in terms of learning the basics, that is, choosing a topic to doing the research. It gives me a great pleasure to introduce our today's guest and speaker, Dr. D. Yogananda Rao from the Department of English, Jain University. I welcome you, sir. I'm profusely delighted while talking about his achievements. Dr. Rao holds a PhD degree on the topic License to Thrill, mapping the literary origins and sociology of thriller narratives. Sir also holds an MPhil degree where his thesis title was Animal Narratives as Social and Cultural Texts. Dr. Rao has been teaching English at both UG and PG levels in reputed colleges in Bangalore for 32 years. He has edited several books and published over 40 research papers in national and international journals, apart from being on the editorial and review panels of reputed journals. He is on the board of studies of several universities and colleges in India. Sir is also supervising MPhil and PhD research dissertations. His area of interests are popular culture studies, eco-criticism, Indian drama, curriculum, and research designs. Sir, we feel really fortunate today to get a chance to be guided by you. Once again, on behalf of the management of Silicon City College, I welcome you to this session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your kind words. I must begin by thanking Silicon City College management, principal, staff members for having, what shall I say, be a part of this webinar or a part of this FDP program. Generally, I forget to thank in my enthusiasm toward the end, where thanks generally are proposed. I become so very carried away with what I'm saying, even if others are not carried away with what I'm saying. I become so very carried away with what I'm saying that I tend to forget to thank the hosts. So I always make it a point, I try to make it a point to thank the hosts right at the beginning. Thank you very much. There are one or two things that I'm assuming. Thank you, ma'am. Before I start, there are one or two things that I'm assuming. It is possible that I'm wrong, but we always have to have some kind of an assumption in our mind when we begin. The first assumption is this, that all of you come from literature background, or at least in any case, language background. It doesn't matter whether it is Kannada or Hindi or English. But I do know that my assumption is slightly wrong, because I can see on my screen one or two names that I can recognize who are not from English. But however, since this FDP is basically meant for language teachers or scholars, I have to make certain assumptions, and this is the assumption that I am making. Though part of what I say is applicable generally to most other disciplines. Certain examples that I might give you might be specifically from language or literary studies. That is the first assumption. The second assumption is this, that most of you are at the beginning stage of your research. But I do see that there are some of you who already hold a doctoral degree. I'm sorry, this particular FDP, this what shall we say, episode of the FDP is not aimed at uh, people who already have doctoral degrees. This is specifically aimed at those people who are in the beginning stages of research or are contemplating on doing their research. That's the second assumption. And the third assumption, when Professor Raghu uh, discussed or spoke to me about the possibilities of having an FDP, online FDP on something connected with research, he gave me a free hand to design this FDP. The idea is this: if you take a look at this FDP, it has a title Beginning Research. The idea is this, that this is going to be the first part of at least a 3-part FDP, right? So like any Aristotelian prescription, beginning, middle, and an end. This is the beginning. Well, there's nothing wrong in being a little classical, even if it is out of fashion. So this is the beginning. That is why it is titled Beginning. And also most literature, English, at least students of English literature will not miss the beginning, the term beginning in the title. Literally, it is the beginning one. I also, at the back of my mind, I had Peter Barry's book, Beginning Theory, which written 25 years ago was a boon for most literature students who had to negotiate with literary theory, especially with the kind of backgrounds that we had in our Indian universities. Getting acquainted with, becoming familiar with what was then 25 years ago, the height of theory. So in a way, that helped a lot of us, including me, it helped a lot of us to get to know the basics of cultural and literary theories. So in a way, I also had that in my at the back of my mind when I suggested this title. So I'm assuming that the third thing is this, the third assumption is this, that this is going to be the first of 3 FDPs that we will have. This will address the initial stages of research. The second one, I envisage, will address the middle stages. And the third one, not in these 5 days. In these 5 days, we will only deal with the early part of the research, that is the beginning part of the research. Any research program or any research engagement can be divided into phases. The early part of the research, which is the beginning part, and then the middle part, and then the last part. The last part is when you start writing your thesis. Right. So the assumption here is that these 5 days, along with my other colleague from Tumku University, Dr. Shruti Swami, we will be trying to take you through the early stages of research. So in a way, if what is discussed in these 5 days somehow does not seem to be very helpful to you, it means you either are in a different phase of research or stage of research, or maybe something else. So that could be one reason why you may not derive any benefit. In any case, I have to make certain assumptions, and these are the assumptions that I have made. Now, this becomes very, very pertinent, especially because The UGC, as all of us are aware, has made PhD the minimum eligibility for lecturership in degree colleges, universities from 2021. That is from next year onwards. So whether we like it or not, if we wish to stay in this line, teaching at university, that is degree or PG levels, it will become mandatory for us to get a PhD. So it is also from this point of view that I thought we would design an FDP in three that will address three different phases. So this particular FDP, these 5 days, beginning with today, will address the initial stages, like I said. So I'm assuming that the first step is to choose a topic, and therefore, this lecture number 1 addresses issues that are connected with choosing a topic, which is always the starting point of research. In a way, we all know that every one of us does her or his research for various reasons. If I have to buy a car, I do my own research. If I have to buy a shirt, I do my own research. So in a way, everyone is involved in doing research. Research forms the backbone of our lives, more so in academics. There is absolutely no doubt that research impacts our teaching. I have been a beneficiary of this in the sense that my teaching has become sharper. That's of course for the students to say, my students to say, but my teaching, I can see that my teaching has become a little more focused, a little more sharp, and has acquired a kind of density that my teaching did not have in the early stages when I was not involved in research. So research does impact our teaching. The beginning stage for any research is choosing a topic. Now, that is one thing that I have been repeatedly asked. The last 4 or 5 years, I've also been a research guide. So I get a lot of scholars, students, youngsters who just finished their PG coming to me and asking me for guidance with regard to choosing a topic, etc. That's the reason why I thought we must begin, or we could begin this session, or rather this FDP, with this in mind, that is choosing, addressing this particular issue, choosing a topic. And secondly, quite a lot of our students these days, UGC has made it mandatory that our PG programs must become research oriented, because of which almost all universities have made it mandatory to have a dissertation submitted in the course of their 4 semesters. Generally, it is reserved for the last semester. Here again, I see a lot of my students running around asking for topics, what could they work on, etc., etc. So that also prompted me to, because most of us who come to do our PhD may come from having worked on a dissertation in our PG. In some universities, it was not mandatory. It's only in the last 1 or 2 years that it has been made mandatory in universities. So in other words, quite a lot of us, when we come to do our research after our PG, we come from very little or have no experience of doing research. So the beginning point for us is to, how do we go about choosing a research topic? Before that, there are 1 or 2 things that is important for us to know before we get into what is research or get into research. It's important for us to know what exactly research means. Whenever I speak about research, whether it is in my class or in some conference or in a webinar or an FDP like this, I always begin with this. This is my favorite line when it comes to research. This is very cliched, yes, absolutely no doubt. This is very, very cliched. I simply begin with this. You see, when we do research, it is necessary for us to be aware of what exactly we are getting into and what exactly we are doing. This must be very clear in our minds. The first thing is this, because it is a cliche, no doubt about it. But just because something is a cliche does not mean that it is not true or that it is not valid. You see, therefore, though I run the risk of beginning with a cliche, I wouldn't mind. It's a systematic investigation. The moment we say it's a systematic investigation, please remember, it will have to go through certain conventions. It will have to adhere to certain conventions. If it is systematic, it also has inbuilt in it some kind of processes, and these processes, remember, are like assembly line. That is, they one follows the other. That is why I spoke to you about different stages, because it is systematic. Anything that is done systematically will follow certain stages or certain phases. That's what is scientific about it. That is why we call it systematic. Any systematic investigation is also a scientific investigation. And this should always lead to finding something new. In other words, meaningful research, good research will always add to the body of existing knowledge. So when we do research, we must understand the implications of doing research. Remember, we are making an attempt to add to the body of knowledge that already exists. That is how very serious research is. So therefore, there are certain conventions that have to be followed, and this is what we will get acquainted with or become familiar with in the course of the next couple of days. Now, the first point on your screen, a systematic investigation into a phenomena leading to finding something new. This is not restricted to literary studies or language studies alone. That is something that research, no matter in which discipline it is, will always involve. So research, irrespective of which discipline we conduct research in, it is always a systematic investigation into a phenomena that is not clear, it's not known, nothing much is known about the phenomena or the occurrence. So what researcher basically does is to get to know something that is not known, which means, in other words, research is a journey into the unknown. And the moment we say it is a journey into the unknown, it is unpredictable. So if you have made up your mind even before you start your research, if you have made up your mind as to what you are going to say, then there can be no research. There can be no research. Research is a process by which you get to know. But if you've already made up your mind, then your mind is closed. You must have a rough idea. Yes, then you must have an idea, because that idea is what will give you the direction. But if you've already made up your mind that this is what I'm going to say, this is what I'm going to find in that novel, or this is what I'm going to find in this poem, then you already have made up your mind and there's no research there. Because research always is an exploration or a journey into the unknown, something that's not known. So have that in your minds. Rather, any researcher must have that in her or his mind. And specifically, literary research, generally speaking, means finding something new within a literary work. Now, please mark the word new here. You can see that the word new occurs in this point also. So the first point was a very general kind of an observation on what research is, which is applicable to all disciplines. The second one is specifically for our literary studies. But however, unless our research, our study brings in something new, throws up something new, it is no research at all. So we basically are, as researchers, trying to journey into the unknown, walk into the unknown. We have certain maps, yes, we have certain guidelines, yes, but it is unpredictable. It should be unpredictable. And that is the best part of it, that you enjoy discovering. Real joy for an academician, for people who are connected with academics, is always discovering things on our own, especially on our own, or even if it is something that is pointed out to us, that's fine. But discovering something on our own is what provides maximum joy. So this is what research basically means. Of course, we could go on and on. But that's just the general idea that all of us must keep in our mind when we embark on research. Well, then the next step is to understand how research can be classified. What kind of research are we doing? Whatever we do, can it be seen this way? Can it be seen that way? There are some rough classifications. The first classification is based on the nature of data. Well, what do we mean by data? Again, most social sciences, people in social sciences, people in physical sciences, what they call as data, even for that matter, ELT, as well as language studies and linguistics, phonetics, and things like that. What they call data is not what literary students or literary studies will call data. For us, for students of literature or people involved in literary research or literary studies, the data is already there. That means it's all, which means it exists, already exists in the way of the poem or in the way of a novel or by the way of a play. So the data for us already exists. Whereas for people in, say, sociology or psychology, or even for that matter, like I said, ELT or language studies, they do not have the data, in the sense that people like such people who are doing their research in literature, the novel is already written, the poem is already written, so they have something that they can analyze. They already have that. But for people who come from non-literature uh, areas, they do not have the data. So the first step for them is to procure this data or elicit this data or obtain this data. In physical sciences, it happens by the way of experiments and things like this. In social sciences, it happens by the way of doing what is called as a field work, going into the field, identifying sample size, then conducting interviews maybe, or having questionnaires, having surveys done, etc., etc. But for students of literature, the data, like I said, is already there. So there is a fundamental difference based on the nature of the data. And more often than not, when we go out into the field, as people from social sciences will, the kind of data that they obtain is numerical, statistical, number based. So that is why one way of classifying our research is based on the nature of the data. Ours in literary studies, it is textual. Whereas in much of social sciences, it is numerical. And therefore, one way of classifying research is this way. That's based on the nature of the data: qualitative research and quantitative research. Now, qualitative research is the kind of research that most literature students will engage in. For these people, what is very important is the analysis part, close reading, analysis part. That is what is very, very important. That is what will consume time for literary students or students who do their research in literature. Whereas in language or ELT or in social sciences, because the nature of the data is numerical, much of their time is spent in much of the research time, so to say, is spent in eliciting or obtaining data. They have to go into the field, like I said. Much of their time is going into the field, getting the data, the authentic data. So in a way, how a literature student spends her time or his time doing research, and what the literature student will spend his or her time on research in during the research time, so to say, is not the same way in which a non-literature student, say some physics or sociology or even economics for that matter, the kind of time that they will spend on the research activities, I mean, within doing our research. We will spend, the literature students will spend more time analyzing the text, identifying the appropriate method to analyze the text, whereas much of social sciences and language related studies, they will focus, much of their time is spent on obtaining the data, getting the data. The second way of classifying research is based on the nature and outcome or the impact of research. There are two kinds of research. One is what's called as revolutionary research. The other is called evolutionary research. Now, a revolutionary research is a kind of research that will totally change the cartograph or realign the domain itself, the studies itself, the discipline itself. It will shake the discipline. It will realign the certain things that are there in the in that discipline. But whereas evolutionary is extension, something that has already been done, you are extending it. Now, as students of literature, I'd like to give you the example of, say, Edward Said's Orientalism. When Orientalism was published in 1978, English studies had almost come to some kind of stasis. In other words, no one knew what would be the next way forward for English studies. And when Orientalism was published, it gave rise to an academic institution called post-colonial studies. Now, not only did it realign literary studies, I mean, how literary studies were conducted, it brought about a total change. And it is very, very difficult for us to go back to those days before Said's Orientalism was published and conduct the research in the way that pre-Orientalism days, in which research was conducted in the pre-Orientalism days. So it is possible for us to see Said's Orientalism as revolutionary. Well, going out of literary studies, of course, though I do not have exact data or statistics, but my very, very strong hunch or guess is this. Most of these Nobel Prize winners, I mean, I don't mean for literature, I mean for physics, chemistry, and biology, these disciplines, 90% of the kind of research that they do in order to be awarded the Nobel Prize is revolutionary in nature. Evolutionary is extension of this. In a healthy research environment, for example, if I use post-colonial theory uh, to analyze certain texts, then that means I am doing what is called as evolutionary research and not revolutionary. Now, in a healthy research environment, both revolutionary as well as evolutionary, both of them need to be balanced. Evolutionary research is as important as revolutionary research. It is not as if evolutionary research is second class research. No, it's not like that. Evolutionary research is as much important as revolutionary research. So when we embark on research, it is necessary for us to know what it is that we are doing. In my experience, though you may have selected a topic, And though you may have spent, say, 1 or 2 years doing research in your topic, in my experience, I've come across very, very few researchers who actually know what they are doing. They would have actually finished their pre-submission, rather pre-registration colloquium, which these days is compulsory, as we all know. They may have finished their proposal presentation, which is what happens in a pre-registration colloquium. They may have done that, but they still are not aware of what exactly the implication of their work is, what exactly their work involves. So it is important for us to know as researchers the kind of research that we are doing. Is it evolutionary or is it revolutionary? And based on design, it is possible for us to classify our research into synchronic or dichronic. Of course, you will recognize that these terms, synchronic and dichronic, were proposed by Saussure when he formulated his theories and concepts with regard to language studies. By synchronic, what we mean is any kind of a study that is focused on one specific time instant in specific period. Whereas dichronic is what happens when you study over the evolution of something, the development of something. For example, if we were to study, let us say, one novel by Charles Dickens, then that would be a synchronic study. Now, if we take a look at the evolution of the English novel or the novels written in Britain, then that would be a dichronic study. But however, there can be certain, what shall we say, slight variations in this. For example, I might choose to study of all Keats' works, only Keats' odes. I might choose to study that. So in a way, it is synchronic because I am choosing only one writer and one specific set of odes or one specific set of poems that Keats wrote 1.5 years before he died in he died in 1821. So most of his odes, as we know, were written in 1819, the autumn, the 4 5 months of the last second half of 1819. Now, if there are 6 odes that Keats wrote, now if I begin with the first ode in the chronological order and go on to the last ode, the ode to autumn, that was the last ode, last of the 6 odes that he wrote. Now, then when I see a growth in, a development in his writing technique, his precision, which from the first ode to the last ode, we see that there is a maturity that Keats comes to acquire. Now, here, please notice, while at one stage it may seem as if it is synchronic, it's still dichronic because it is an evolution that we are talking about. So when our study has to do with something like an evolution or development of something that can be spread over quite a few years, then that is dichronic. Synchronic is where we study one single text or one single writer. So in a way, it could be a mixture of synchronic or dichronic. So it's necessary for us to get to know what kind of research we are doing. That's very, very important. Then we come to, with that background, we come to choosing a research topic. In my opinion, of course, like I said a few minutes ago, quite a lot of my students, former students who aspire to do their MPhil or a PhD, they come to me and ask for a topic. Usually, I do not encourage this kind of a question. But since I have to be very, very polite and not too very rude to my students, I somehow deflect this. But the right way of going about choosing a topic is to choose a topic yourself. Please do not ask your friends to suggest a topic or even your guide to suggest a topic. See, the moment you go to a guide and ask her or him to suggest a topic, let me tell you what happens from this side, that is from the guide side. The guide is not going to take you seriously at all. The guide may be very polite. The guide may give you patient hearing. The guide may even have a cup of coffee with you and discuss. But beyond that, the guide is not going to have any respect or will not take you very seriously. You must go with a topic. Please do go with a topic. That shows, that tells your guide, your potential guide, prospective guide, that tells him or her that you have been serious. So instead of relying on your friends, of course you can discuss with your friends, yes, but you must ultimately choose the topic on your own. That is very, very important. And the best topics are those that originate, that emerge out of your own reading of a work of literature, rather than what the teacher may have said in the class. Yes, the teacher may have said something in your class when you are doing your PG or UG, that may have sparked, but unless you have followed that and seen it for yourself, that is not going to work as a topic. It must emerge out of your own experience. Unless it emerges out of your experience, it is not going to hold you for a long time. Remember, PhD engagement is for 4 or 5 years. For 4 or 5 years, it means once you get into your enroll for a PhD course and your admission is approved, remember, you are going to spend the next 3-4 years, the best portion of 3-4 years, the best part of your life probably, doing background reading, or rather doing reference work, writing on this topic. So unless it originates out of your own experience, it is not going to hold your interest. You see, the first few days when you begin to do your research, the kind of enthusiasm that you show, if that topic has to have that kind of a hold on you, then the topic must have originated from your own experience. Otherwise, you are likely to experience what's called as a fall off. After having done, say, 1.5 years of reading, then there is a slackening. Well, that slackening can happen for several other reasons. Maybe certain commitments in our personal lives. Well, I'm not taking that into account at all, but that's very, very important. That's a very important factor. But right now, I'm only focusing on academic considerations, not non-academic considerations. So unless that topic has some kind of a meaning for you, then that's not going to sustain your interest. That is not going to motivate you. Some of us, the slacking off also comes because there is a fall in our motivation levels. Our motivation levels will be high when we are doing something that is meaningful to us in personal terms. How well we choose our topic depends on how well you know yourself. What is it that interests you? Has something struck a chord in you? Does it pertain to your interest? You see, as people, academics, literature is only one of our interests. There are so many other interests we may have developed. Some of us may have developed interest in sports. Some of us may have developed interest in dance, for example. Some of us may have developed some interest in other art forms. Some of us may have developed interest in, for example, wildlife. Right? Now, the best thing to do is to integrate the two. Our literary interest in literary studies, which is, of course, our profession, plus our, what shall we say, interest outside literature. the best thing to do is to integrate the two. When you integrate the two, then it won't seem as a burden. So try to get to know more about yourself. What is it apart from leave literature? What is it apart from literature that seems to hold some kind of an interest for you? Try and see if the two can be integrated. So if you're working on, if you like sports, well then why not work on, for example, cricket narratives? Why not work on cricket narratives, right? So if dance interests you, why not choose those texts that have dancers or dance as a very, very integral part of the plot or the story, and then work on it. How is dance depicted? How are dancers depicted, etc., etc. I'm just giving you an example. So this is one way by which it is possible for us to choose our topic. So choosing a topic, a meaningful topic, a topic that will continue to have the same kind of interest for you for 3-4 years or 5 years till you finish. If it has to have that kind of a hold on you, if it has to motivate you, then you have to choose a topic with which you have a personal vibe. For example, some students from northeastern India, when they come to do their MPhil or PhD, I usually suggest that they do something that's connected with their own land. That is, say, Nagaland or Assam or Shillong or Arunachal, Meghalaya, wherever they've come from. See, it should have a personal vibe. Unless it has a personal meaning, a personal vibe for you, it's not going to work. It's not going to work, believe me. There will be a slacking off and your guide will be at your back. The guide will keep calling you, and you will, in the initial stages, keep making lame excuses, and in the later stages, will stop receiving her or his call. That is what is going to happen. So choosing a topic is very, very important. Don't choose any and every topic or topics at a random. Please ensure that you spend some time with the topic before you finalize on it. And if you find a personal interest in it, then that nothing like it. Then the next thing is, of course, the next thing is to identify a very broad area. Say, is it literature or is it language studies or something like that? And then is it written texts that you would like to focus on, or is it cinema, visual text that you would like to focus on? Indian writing, South Asian, European, what? The next step in choosing a topic is to identify the broad area. We always begin with something which is very, very broad and then narrow it down. And remember, all meaningful research, it doesn't matter which discipline you are doing your research in, will always begin with you having a point of view, you having an argument. See, this argument could be an extension. Someone has worked on something, now you want to extend it. Is it applicable to these set of texts too? An argument or a point of view. That means you have found something new to say, and that is because you have developed a point of view. Unless you have a point of view and an argument, it will be very difficult for us to do any research, any meaningful research. Midway, you will get stuck. So, when you choose a topic, ensure that you have an argument to make, or there is a specific point of view from which you will analyze or look at the texts. For example, if we are talking about King Lear, well then, once upon a time, King Lear was seen as the tragedy of a man who was too very indulgent, given to vanities. But today, please notice how King Lear is seen. It is also seen as a transition time in the history of England, where it was moving from one kind of capitalism to another kind of capitalism. There's agrarian capitalism to industrial capitalism. So we can see, you see, that is a point of view that we can take. So it is passing through that. The text has embedded in it this transition that is taking place in England. So you see, you can develop a point of view like that. The best thing to do is, instead of talking about topic, it would be better for us to have a research question. Consider your study as an answer. But for that to be an answer, you must have a question. So instead of running behind a topic, it would be better for us to formulate research questions. Now, we can formulate research questions only if we have a point of view and we have an argument. When we have developed an argument, when we have identified a point of view, then what we call as topic suddenly gets transformed into what's called as a research question. So our research can take this paradigm also, question answer paradigm, or problem solution paradigm. Much of language studies or ELT studies or studies in social sciences, they have the problem solution paradigm. But in literary studies, we problematize. Anyway, that for another day, what exactly do we mean by problematization? How can research lead to problematization? That we will see. That will be the topic or topic for another day's discussion. But now, once you have identified a topic, identified the argument, and then the point of view, you will notice that your topic will not remain as a topic. It will have transformed into a research question or a series of research questions, for which your research is going to be an answer. That means, in other words, you see, when I go to an exam, I'm given the question paper. The question paper, obviously, it's called the question paper because it does questions, and I know what to answer. Assuming that I've read, I know. Now, here, no teacher is going to give you the questions. You are going to formulate your own questions. This is what is very important. Ensure that you transition, you move from the topic stage to research question stage. My suggestion, have at least two topics to begin with, at least two topics to begin with. Then when you do some background reading, by background reading, what I mean is try to find out what work has already been done. In a very, very purely research language, so to say. This will be called as, well, sometimes it's called as survey of literature, but also review of literature. Now, what exactly does review of literature mean? By review of literature, what we mean is simply identifying sources that will tell you what work has already been conducted or done in the area in which you wish to work. Now, there are two things here. Remember how I began this presentation with: research always means something that will lead to new things. If something has already been done, what's new about it? Why are you wasting your time, your guide's time, your research time, the university's time, and society's time at large? Why are you doing it? Don't click it. If something has already been done, we'll leave that, because your research question will emerge out of this. That means you finding out what has already been done. When you find out what has already been done, Then you will also identify what has not been done, which is what in research jargon is called research gap. Your research gap will become your research question. So do some background reading, try to find out what has already been done. And today it is very difficult to say that no work has been done at all. So consult a PhD thesis, consult research articles, make it a habit to read journals, make it a habit to consult theses, dissertations that might have been submitted to different universities in India. Today it is easily available on Shodh Ganga. Please do make use of that. Please do use those things in order to find out what work has been done. This must be carried out in all seriousness. This will take time, and never ever hurry in choosing a topic. Never ever hurry. Please do some background reading. In my opinion, you must have done at least 6 months of good focused background reading in order to arrive at a research topic. Do not arrive at the topic in a hurry. So you must, if you wish to do your research, you must plan it well. There are a lot of things that you will be required to do. Ensure that for the next 4 or 5 years, you will be able to give that much time. Yes, of course, UGC has made it mandatory to made it mandatory for all aspiring assistant professors or professors to have done their PhD. Well, that is not the only consideration. Yes, I agree that that's a very important consideration, but that's not the only consideration. It's not the only consideration. Degree is not just for degree's sake. So therefore, you must mentally plan. You must mentally plan and prepare yourself mentally for the next 4 or 5 years. You are going to give time to this. And how are you going to give time to this? Because we all have to work. We cannot resign. We all need money to run our lives, our families. So you have to plan. That's very, very important. So a part of your planning also is to be spent, or time that is meant for the planning stage also is to be spent on choosing a good topic. Choose a good topic, and this will take 6 to 7 months. Never be in a hurry. So even before you apply to universities, ensure that you have begun at least 6 7 months in even before you start applying. Generally, what I see in quite a few cases is this: they find out that a particular university has notified or called for PhD admissions, etc., etc. And in the next 4 days or 2 days, they decide on the topic and submit the proposal, or rather submit an abstract or a proposal that is generally to be submitted along with the PhD application. No, don't do that. Don't do that. I would never suggest that you should do that. Even in the worst of situations, don't do that. You plan. PhD is an engagement. Well, it's something like a marriage, which means don't go into it without being mentally prepared. Well, then, once you've done that, once, like I said, you see, once you identify what work has already been done, then it will be easy for you to identify what work has not been done. And that's where you will derive your argument from. And once you derive your argument, once you come to identify an argument, then that becomes your research topic. Well, this is not going to happen in a linear sort of a fashion. That means you have an idea and then do some background reading. Sometimes you do the background reading and then come to have an idea. It moves back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Do not expect things to work in a chronological fashion. Do not expect things to work in a chronological fashion, especially in this stage. Especially in this stage. It will move back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So spend time with your topic, choosing a topic. That's why I said have two topics, at least two topics to begin with. Then as time goes by, and then depending upon the discussions that you have with your potential or prospective guide, you can zero in on one, but begin with two topics, at least two topics, and spend time doing the background reading or work on both of them. Both of them. Well, I think we have come to the end of the time, right? So this next 15 minutes is for, I think, you to ask questions. I hope whatever I've tried to convey has been clear. If there are any questions, I'd like to take. Now, in my next part of the presentation, I will begin from here, from where I stopped. Right? What to do after we have chosen a topic. The next part. Anyway, I would like to see if there are any clarifications that people need, or there are any questions. Ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Archana,
Yes, sir.
yeah. Those who wants to ask the question, they can raise their hands.
Yeah, yes, sir.
We'll unmute them and they can ask the question.
Yeah, yes, sir. Hello.
Yeah.
Ma'am, can I unmute you? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Yeah, ma'am. You're audible.
So good evening. Kusma here.
Yes, ma'am.
It was a very nice session, sir. Really very much helpful for the beginners. Related to the choosing of the topic, I have a question here. So, my PG degree is related to so many subjects I have done. I have done my PG in social work also, along with MA in English. I'm very much connected to psychology. Many times, so many questions will be haunting in my mind. I want to connect psychology with literature. Recently I'm thinking about language skills and how language skills are going to enhance one's personality development. So these kind of questions will be haunting all the time in my mind, and I want to choose a topic to do some research related to this. It can be possible, sir? Is it possible?
Perfectly possible. Perfectly possible.
How can I go with this, sir?
Now, the first thing is, since you have identified two interests, that's very good. You want to integrate psychology with language teaching, language learning, and things like this. Identify what kind of work has already been done. Right? Identify, always do some background reading. Identifying what kind of work has already been done. Now, would you be interested in working on acquisition of language, or the effect that language has on the confidence level of a person, or what is the role that confidence, etc., plays in acquisition of language, especially a language like English? Do some background reading, in the sense that do some reference work. Try to find out what has already been done in this. Now you have identified, right? Psychology, language learning, language acquisition. Broadly, you seem to have identified. Now do some extra reading, background reading, and you will be able to see what has already been done. And that will also give you an idea as to what has not been done. You see, it does both. In trying to find out what has been done, it would be possible for you to know what has not been done, and that
Yeah,
will help
I'm
you to choose your topic.
I'm finding difficult with the same thing, sir. I'm not able to find out whether people have done some job related to this topic or not. From past 2 months, I'm searching, some literature on the same thing, but I'm not able to get anything. Only few of the research papers I'm able to read, but nowhere I have seen, connection with personality development and language skills. Can you recommend something for me related to
Shodhganga, you've tried Shodhganga, ma'am?
Yodaganga? I should, sir. I got a good point from you. I'll see that. I'll search.
One. If you have time, please go to IFLU, Hyderabad.
Okay.
There are tons and tons of theses that are lying there.
Okay.
They have a separate ELT department there.
Okay.
So if you have time, please go there. But
Okay.
of course, if you can access Shodhganga, that's very easy to access. It's not very difficult. Anyone can access. Anyone with internet connection with Google will be able to access Shodhganga. Please do. You will be surprised to see the kind of theses, number of theses that are there on Shodhganga. Please consult Shodhganga, man.
Thank
That
you
will
so
be helpful
much.
to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll unmute Neena, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you're audible, ma'am.
Yeah, okay, ma'am. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, ma'am.
Sir, I'm just working in a school now. I have just completed my PG in English literature, and I have also done a ELT course in Bangalore. And I just wanted to know which area in ELT is more, what to say, at the peak, like which is more necessary at present, and that would help in my research. Can you please suggest some topics related to that, sir?
Ma'am, there are two things here that seem to be always in fashion insofar as ELT is concerned. One is acquisition of language.
Okay, sir.
Right, ma'am? That has always been in fashion. So how
Okay,
do
sir.
students acquire language? What are the factors that will help students acquire language? And there is also another, what is called as the process approach and the product approach.
Okay.
Much of what is being followed till now has been what is called as the product approach. Now the focus has shifted on the process approach. Right.
Okay.
So you being a teacher, well then, you please notice the kind of problems that your students have in learning English. You can identify one specific area. Do they have problems in reading, or do they have problems in acquiring writing skills?
Okay, sir.
What exactly do they have problems in? As you go to your class, please be observant, right?
Okay, sir.
So that will give you an idea. See, this is what is called as the teacher researcher.
Okay, sir.
I hope I've answered your question, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll just work on it. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm unmuting Karuna, ma'am.
Sir, good evening, sir. Sir, I was your student in
Yeah,
VHS.
I know, Karuna. I know. I
Yes.
remember. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. How are you, sir? It's
Getting
been a very
along.
long time since I've seen you. So
Hmm.
I had a small question, though I'm not from the literature background. I am partly from science and partly from education. I'm working in the MEd department of Vijaya Teachers College. I'm an associate professor there. And research methodology is one of the subjects that I teach there. So one small doubt regarding language, because I'm totally new to this. I just wanted to ask you, see, I've guided one thesis recently. I'm doing the final corrections for that. And the topic is on the effectiveness of collaborative learning strategies on improvement of grammatical accuracy among 6th standard students. So this is an interdisciplinary approach to language along with education, but our main focus is how effective is the methodology that we are using, we are applying there. So which do you think is a better approach? Is the interdisciplinary approach contributing more towards, language, what can I say, propagation or development, or is it the pure language research work that people are doing under guidance like under your guidance and people like you. So which do you think is more advantageous? Should we take up researches in education or with any other disciplinary subjects, like even science? Because without language, I don't think any other subject would exist. So even in science, there's a type of language that we use. So what kind of researches do you actually recommend for, especially in interdisciplinary type of, what to say, researches?
Karuna, the problem that you seem to have stems from or can be located in the broad area of what we call as ELT, English language teaching.
Yes.
Right? Broadly, of course, you might already be aware of it, but this is located in that broad domain. Now, ELT itself is interdisciplinary.
Okay.
Right? ELT itself is interdisciplinary. Now, when we talk about language, pure language, unless it has to do with linguistic resources, pure linguistic resources like phonetics, right? And if it is going to get restricted within that, then that is going to be pure language studies. But these days, pure language studies are no longer possible, because whatever theories of language had to be propounded, they've already been propounded.
That is what the scope is lesser nowadays.
Yeah. So you have to locate it in the interdisciplinary field.
Sir, and
That's
one more problem that I am seeing among master degree students, because I teach them, is though they come from different backgrounds, they don't have, especially science students and commerce and other disciplines, they don't have the basic language, grammar, or whatever it is. The structure of language itself is missing in them. So at what level do you think the research has to be done more so that we go to the grassroots level and improve their language abilities?
No, what you can do is you can begin at any level. That's what I was trying to say. You see, diachronic approach, synchronic approach. This is what I was trying to say here. It is possible for you to take them at the time that they are in, at any given time, say 6th standard, 10th standard, doesn't matter. So that becomes a synchronic study, right? What kind of problems do they have with regard to, say, pronunciation, or with regard to use of nouns, for example? What kind of problems do they have, and to what can it be attributed to?
Okay. And what age group do you think, because Vygotsky says language development can only happen in groups. So at what age group of a child do you think language has to be stressed more so that we can start our research from there?
Basically, if you look at language as a skill, and if it's a skill, it develops throughout one's life. Though, of course, there are quite a few theories which say students or children who are younger have the potential to learn the language faster.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that people who are older, they lose this potential. It's just that it becomes a little decreased, reduced, the speed gets reduced. But when we are children, then it is easier for us to pick up languages.
Okay.
Having said that, in the kind of country that we live in, the kind of situation we live in, there are so many socio-economic reasons for students not being able to learn a language. So my suggestion is, instead of going back, take at any level. Now, what you could do is, no matter at what level you take, you could have this kind of a problem solution kind of a design to it. What is the problem? Why is it a problem? Why has it come to be a problem? For whom is it a problem? And in what ways is the problem manifesting itself? Okay. Now, once you have located that, then see if you can. This is where I was talking about the process approach. See, one of the reasons why students have not been able to learn the language or language skills is because for a long time, till very recently, the product approach was what was used by English teachers. Now there is a shift that is taking place. We are moving away from product to process. So what is to be done? That was how it was focused on. rather than how it is to be done. So now we are looking at, if you want to teach essay writing, then we break down the essay writing activity into stages.
Okay.
Right? So we strengthen each stage. Now this is the process approach.
Okay.
Process approach will always identify the stages. Right? So now you could use that process approach, and that will help you develop recommendations or solutions to the problems.
Okay, so you mean to say it can be taken up at any level?
You can
We
take
need
it
not
any
have to
level.
concentrate only on early childhood education or middle school or high school or degree.
Not necessary.
So wherever the problem arises, a research
Yeah.
can be taken up. It can be even as small as a action research or a major research.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. And I still remember your Macbeth class.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Any other participants? Thank you, ma'am.
Archana, I would like to ask sir a question.
Yeah.
So Pallavi here.
Yeah, ma'am.
So for literature, anyways, when we talk about English literature, it is very vast and we have a lot of scope. But as a teacher, we do feel that certain times in a class, we find so many problems in teaching method. So can we just go for a research which is not particularly about English literature, but it is about teaching method while we teach English? So what kind of topics or what kind of areas can we cover in that?
So more or less what I was telling Karuna.
Yeah, it is somehow
Something
related
like
to
that.
that.
Now identify a specific problem.
Okay.
Right. Now, do the students have problems in comprehending a poem or following a poem? No. I mean, you could integrate literature too with that, because when you teach a poem, there are a lot of things that you teach. It's not just the beauty of a poem, it's not just the imagery of a poem that you teach. You can also teach them how to read a poem. You can also teach them the importance of punctuation, the use of language, right? You can and then pronunciation. All these things can be taught, even if you are teaching a poem. I'm just giving you an example. I'm not saying that you should. That's what you should do your research on. What I'm trying to say is, even when we teach these things, it is perfectly possible for us to identify the kind of problems that students have. What I would suggest is, be a little more alert and see what kind of problems students seem to have. Is it with poems, or is it with writing, or maybe a short story, or something else, anything else?
Yeah,
It doesn't
mostly
matter.
comprehension. Comprehension is the thing that they usually they don't get it, and though they understand, but many of the times they are not able to put it into their own words. So such things also can be considered, right? That such questions also.
Speaking about comprehension, we know that reading comprehension takes place at 3 levels. What's called as the factual level, and then the inferential level, and then the critical level. So then, even if we are talking about comprehension, it would be possible for you to maybe notice at what level they are having problems. Is it at the factual level, factual understanding level, that they have a problem? Or do they have a problem at the inferential level? Or do they have a problem at the critical level? So you see, even if we talk about reading comprehension has different stages of comprehension. The most basic one is the factual.
Yes.
Next comes, but factual in itself is not enough. It should, for example, students who are in, say, +2 stage, they must have moved from factual to inferential. And when they come to degree, they must have moved from inferential to critical. Now, that's the ideal, what shall we say, suggested bandwidth, so to say. That means they move from being elementary learners of language to advanced level learners of language. So it is possible that even if we are talking about reading comprehension, maybe you could look at the level at which they are in and see what kind of reading comprehension problems they have. Is it at the elementary level, or that means is it at the factual level, or is it at the critical level? Maybe you could make a study of that.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, I have one question.
Please go on,
Sir,
ma'am.
when you were talking about the topic selection,
Hmm.
you suggested that read many articles so that you can plan for your topic. But when I see in computer topics, database, data warehouse, and data mining, all topics almost relating to the data, but different topic name will be different, but that complete article says about that management of data. So what would you suggest, sir, to choose a different topic in that database management component? Because I have read several articles. So can you give any suggestions, sir? Because people,
Ma'am, I can only say what I've been telling all the time. Uh, please identify research gap.
okay.
See what has already been done. Yes, you say that you have read a few articles, but a few articles will not do. That's what I said. See, ma'am, please take a look at full-length studies like PhD thesis. Articles alone are very brief. Articles are important. They are very important. But also take a look at full-length studies, book-length studies, or thesis-length studies. First, try to find out what has already been done.
Okay.
Irrespective of the discipline, try to find out what has already been done. And you being in the computer field, I think it is much easier for you than it is for digitally challenged people like us. So please try to find out what has already been done. It might sound very simple, but it isn't. There's a lot of hard work involved in this.
Yes.
Try to find out what has already been done. That will show you the way forward, what you can do and what you cannot do.
Okay.
It will show you the way, ma'am.
Yeah, even sir, I have seen the same thing where in e-commerce titles or articles where other colleges, PhD holders and research scholars were submitting, the title of the article is remain same. That is common to everyone, or it may be a different. But again, the topic they've been keep on giving the e-commerce applications, e-commerce applications. It has already been exhausted. Those applications. It has become old now. So people are still following and writing the same concept again and again in a different way in the different name of the article.
Well, then there are two things I can say. Two things about it. To say that to say something in favor of them, I would simply say that they are examples of evolutionary research. That's one. Second, I would simply say that they have wasted a lot of time. If what has already been done is what is being duplicated in their work, then they have wasted a lot of time. It is either evolutionary in nature. See, something that may work in one sector, they will simply say, let me try and see if it works in another sector. That is evolution. They are only trying to test the applicability to the conditions that exist in another section of the society or sector. So, though it may look very similar, they are extending. It is that's very without looking at their work, it's impossible for me to say. But this is just a guess that I am making.
Yeah.
Right? It could be an attempt that they are making to extend it.
Okay.
Maybe someone has worked on one sector, they extend it, test its applicability in another sector.
Okay.
Possible.
I'll try, sir. Thank you, sir.
That's possible.
Yeah, and just I'll give you a simple example, sir. Banking, management people also submitting banking related article. In that also they are pointing mobile banking, online marketing, and all. Same way in the e-commerce applications also, people are writing about online banking systems. So that also the same topic are using in two different
What?
places.
No. Instead of coming to
Hmm.
sweeping generalization like that or a
Hmm.
conclusion like that,
Hmm.
what I would do is compare
Hmm.
the statement of research problems of the two works or two studies.
Okay.
Take a look at the
Hmm.
research questions. Of course, they will have research problems. You will have research problems.
Hmm.
The idea, I think, other than literature students,
Okay.
most others will have what's called as research problems.
Okay.
So please compare the research problems of the two works or two studies.
Sure, sir.
If it is similar, it is the same,
Yeah.
then please go on to the scope of the study.
Okay.
If they are similar, then that
Hmm.
means
Hmm.
there is no originality.
Oh, that's how I found some article.
Yeah, then
Yes, sir. I
there's
will.
no originality.
Yeah, yes, sir. I'll thank you for your suggestion, sir. It's a wonderful suggestion. I'll do that.
That's how you can say whether it is original or not, or
Okay.
whether it's different or not. Look
Yes.
at the research problems, research
Hmm.
questions,
Hmm.
and the scope of the study.
Yeah. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Any other participants would
There
like
is
to?
Archana ma'am.
Sir.
There is one Priya P. Bagali.
Okay.
Could you unmute her?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I unmuted her.
Priya ma'am, can you ask the same question that you have typed here in the chat box?
Priya ma'am?
I want the audience to see you and also hear you. Okay.
No, ma'am is not. She's unmuted now. Ma'am, unmute, ma'am. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I'm actually Purnima P. Bagali.
Okay.
And since I access through my daughter's account, it's been reflecting as the Priya P. Bagali. So I have a question to Yoganand sir. Yoganand sir, it's me, Purnima Bagali from Grameen.
Yeah, I know you. Please go ahead, Purnima.
Yes, sir. So I have almost completed going through the literature review, and then I'm also chapterization also has started. I just want to know where exactly we should place the theories. Should they be in the beginning, like immediately after the introductory chapter, or should they be the last chapter before summarizing or before concluding the chapter?
What do you mean by theory? Let me understand
The
how you are
theoretical
using the
background.
term theory. Huh?
Yeah, the theoretical background that we give for our thesis. Like I am working on transcendentalism. So should the theories should be connected to the main argument in the second chapter, or should they be in the last chapter?
Second chapter.
Okay.
I will always suggest. I mean, that's how that's a design that I suggest to my scholars.
Okay.
The theorization part must always be in the second chapter.
Even that I was told the same, but there was some confusion when we discussed when I discussed with my guide. So I thought I just wanted to.
No, I would suggest that it should always be in the second chapter.
It will play the role of a kind of foundation to the argument, right, sir?
No, that's where you make the argument.
Yes.
See, when you're analyzing texts, these texts are there for illustration. That's all. That's not going to give you what shall we say? That's not going to construct an argument. That is only going to illustrate an argument.
Okay.
That argument or whatever you argue must be in the second chapter, or must come before your textual analysis.
Okay. Oh, thank
the texts that you might have chosen, they what were called as primary texts in our case.
Yes, sir.
They are always there for illustration.
Okay.
Just to give, for example, say when we go to the class and say, for example, something like that. That is what those primary texts are for.
So to move back and forth between the argument and the theory.
The theorization must come in the second part.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your guidance in such a simple manner. I'm sure many of us who are still the beginners in the field of research have got a lot of ideas about how to finally start our work. So definitely we are benefited today by your guidance. We really are thankful to you for that. And I also thank Principal Sir and all the faculty members. And I thank all the participants who joined us today and took the opportunity to listen to Sir and got so many ideas about the research work.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.